The beginning of the 13th perek of Yehoshua. This is a major change throughout the entire Sefer, the entire book of Yehoshua. From this perek until basically the end, until Chaf Aleph, gets discussed as land distribution. We should just remind ourselves of what we already learned when we were learning the beginning of the Sefer, which is, if had we have not sinned, we would have only been given Chamishi Chumshei Torah, Bereishis Shmos V'Yikra Bamidbar and Dvarim, and Sefer Yehoshua, because we need to figure out who gets which land, the division of the land. This chapter will detail the exact boundaries and inheritances of each tribe. Which tribe got which piece of land? Why? This was strategically done in order to avoid future conflicts, so that people won't get confused and say, no, that's mine, this is mine. This makes it very easy. We can learn from over here the importance of making everything crystal clear. A lot of times when a person hires a construction worker, contractor, to do some work on a house, sometimes it could be very unclear exactly what's being paid for, what's expected of the person. That's why preferably everything should be put into writing. Because once it's in writing, when it comes to business transaction, business deals of any sort, it's in writing. Everyone has it. You text someone something, you email someone something, there's a trace, it's traceable. It says exactly what's going to be done. And that would prevent any future controversies or arguments. The Chafetz Chaim understood human nature very well and human weakness. And he frequently would caution his Talmidim, his students, that whenever they made a deal with someone, make sure to get every single last detail in writing, because even the most honest person could forget the exact terms of a transaction. You have to be very careful with this. When the Chafetz Chaim, when he published his sefarim, his books that he wrote, he had every single detail of the arrangements with the printers put into writing before the work started. From the quality of paper to the type of binding, etc., every single detail was already discussed. And because the Chafetz Chaim had such a great love for his people, he did everything possible, or for people in general. Chafetz Chaim had a love for people in general. He did everything possible to avoid misunderstandings. Therefore, we have to follow his example. That's the introduction that the Lilmod Ulamed offers on this perek. Thought it was a very nice idea. The article to this perek explains, talk about the division of the land among the tribes, as we just mentioned. Specifically in Israel, we're discussing. Now, the truth of the matter is, Moshe already allocated the lands east of the Jordan, right? But the details of the division were going to be left over here, right? With the division of the rest of the country. Now, they actually quote that Gemara that we mentioned in the beginning of today's session, and then the Dardim Chav Beis, the Jews wouldn't have sinned, right? So all that would be is the five books, Chumash, Chumash Chumshei Torah, and Sefer Yehoshua, because you need the boundaries. The first pasuk opens up by informing us of Yeshua's age. The pasuk says over here, Yeshua Zakin Ba B'Yamim. Yeshua was old. Yeshua Zakin Ba B'Yamim Vayomer Adonai Elav Ata Zakanta Basa B'Yamim Va'aretz Nishara Harbi Ma'od L'Reshta. Hashem told them, "You're old. You've lived a lot of days, but the land remains. A lot of it remains to get conquered, to inherit." In other words, Hashem is saying, "You're old, but there's still a lot of work to do." Comes along the Mesilas Hanavim, Rabbi Benjamin Eisenberger, and he says a very deep idea over here. The word Torah comes from the word Horah. Horah means instruction. Everything is an instruction for us. Everything in the Torah, every single pasuk that we have has an instruction. A temporary instruction for in that moment, and for future generations, it instructs us and it teaches us as well. So to over here, a deeper idea behind this pasuk. Hashem is telling Yehoshua, "You're old. Ata zakanta. You're old." What does that mean? Bal biyamim.
What was his idea? What was Reb Eisenberger's idea? What he's saying? Hurrah!
Torah is Torah. It instructs us.
Well,
It
that's
teaches
his
us
yeah.
something. It's not just that it instructs us in the past, but even for future generations, it instructs us. So his idea is like this. Hashem tells Yeshua, "Ata zakanta." What does that mean? You're old? Excuse me. Ta zakanta, you're old. What's the deeper idea behind that? So he wants to say, "V'lav davka le'elu shehegiu l'shana zikna v'seva." This isn't specifically referring to someone who's actually old. Ela afa seirim mazkinim v'holchem miyom liyom. Even people who are younger. Doesn't have to be old age. People who are younger also. Every single day that a person lives is essentially one less day that he is destined to continue living, right? We all have limited time. So this isn't specifically referring to people who are old. Even people who are younger. Right? Every single day, we're older than the day we were the previous day. Right? So he says over here, person has to look how much already passed, how much time already passed in our lives. We have to analyze that. And then once we acknowledge the fact that we are mortal after all, so then the pasuk continues and says, "V'ha'aretz nishara harbe l'rishta." There's a lot of land that remains to inherit. What does that mean? What that means over here is that v'shim leiv lehizboinen v'aretz nishara harbe mod l'rishta tafkir gadol v'nichvad nimsar l'cha b'olam hazeh. There's a big purpose. There's a lot that there's a reason why on this planet we have a lot of work to do over here. There's a lot that's given to us in this world that we have to do. So we should first analyze how much do we do, how much did we do, excuse me, and how much more do we have to do. Hayoim kotzer v'malachim meruba, the Mishnah in Perek Avos says. The day is short and there's a lot of work to be done. What does that mean on a deeper level? There's a whole Tanakh to learn. There's a whole Shas to learn. Bavli, Yerushalmi. There's Torah, Shulchan Aruch, all 4 sections. Rambam, Medrash, many other sefarim. Arba chelki Shulchan Aruch, v'shar chelki HaTorah. V'im lo achshav emasai. If we're not going to start with this now, when are we going to do it? Taitaseh. Like the other mission in Pirkei Avos says. So in other words, the idea, a deeper idea behind what Hashem is telling Yehoshua in this pasuk is there's limited time. Not just specifically if someone's older. Yes, if someone's older, they definitely have less time. But even someone that's younger, there's limited time. I always like saying, sometimes you come back from you go to the supermarket, the grocery store, and they give you a long receipt. Imagine you take the receipt and you rip off a quarter of it. That's our lives. Quarter of the receipt's gone. We got to utilize the time that we have. It's limited. Now, let's just skip to the sixth pasuk momentarily. Pasuk says, Kol yoshvi ahar min levanon ad misrafil samayim kol sidonim anoichi orishim v'bnei b'nai Yisrael. Hashem is telling Yehoshua over here, all of those lands, I will drive them out. I'll take care of it. Right? Just you do a type of lottery, li Yisrael benachalo. Also continues in Vav, just like I commanded you. Kashir sivisicha. So based on this theme that Rabbi Eisenberg is going with over here, he continues on the sixth perek, and he says, Kloimar, right over here, Yadua, it's known, Yodea ani shizakantav lo also biadecha lahashlim, Yerusha za'aras sha'oid nishto harbim od. I know you're old, Hashem is saying, Yehoshua. Hashem's telling Yehoshua, I know you're old. And you were unable to finish with getting all of the land. And there's a tremendous amount to do. Don't worry. Anoichi. I'll take care of it. I'll drive them out. I'll help you out. Va'ata kol asher b'koikecha asa. Everything that's in your strength, you have to do. But you have to take that first step, so to say. We discussed this back in Parshas Lech Lecha. I think it was around 11 years ago, original recording of Iblan.com under the Parshas section. If I'm not mistaken, 2014. It's Parshas Lech Lecha. We have to do whatever is in our ability to do. Hashem will take care of the rest. Based on what he said earlier, this pasuk is coming to encourage us when we're involved with contemplating of what we need to do and see that, wait a second, we're still far away from what we need to do over here. We need to do much more. We need to get a lot more done. And therefore, we have to know ki lo alecha hamalacha ligmor, that it's not on us to finish all of the work. Which means it says in the Avos in the second perek, we don't have to finish all of the work. But then the Mishnah continues, says, V'lo ata bin chorin liyivatli menu. But we're also not free to just not work at all. In other words, yes, we can't finish learning the whole Torah. But we can't just sit around and not do anything. We got to do whatever we're capable of doing. And if we do, and if we do everything that we're supposed to, and we utilize our time properly, all of our free moments to learn Torah, to serve Hashem better, to do good deeds, mitzvahs, etc., Hashem yirah l'laviv, ki kavanasa l'toiva. Hashem will look into our heart and see that our intention is for good. V'hishtadel v'asa k'meitiv yechalasa. Hashem will look into our heart and see that our intention is for good. V'kvar rotza lokim es massive. Chazal say in the Medrash Tanchuma that a person who lives 30 years and let's say from age 10 to 30 he was involved in learning Torah and mitzvahs, and he dies at the young age of 30. Another person lives 80 years and from 10 to 80 who was involved in learning Torah and mitzvahs. So he got 70 years. So you're going to say, wait a second, the first guy only learned Torah for 20 years. The other guy learned for 70 years and he was involved with mitzvahs. The second guy's going to get more reward. No. That's why the Medrash teaches us a tremendous insight, a big chiddush over here. The person who only was involved with Torah mitzvahs for 20 years could say in front of Hashem, if you would have kept me alive, I would have done more. And therefore, the reward could actually be equivalent. The idea is we have to utilize the time. It doesn't matter how long we live. What matters is how we utilize the time, or if we wasted it. God forbid. This is a beautiful explanation of the Mesilas HaNeviim, Rabbi Benjamin Eisenberger. The Ma'am Lo'ez starts off this perek by saying, Yehoshua Zakin Babi Yamin makes an excellent point regarding aging. Regarding aging, the idea is Yehoshua was chalash kechulshos hazakenim. When a person ages, they get weaker. When someone gets older, they get weaker. They start slowing down. Sheyadua hadavar sheyishanashim she'enim zakenim kolkach. Some people are young, relatively speaking. Ubakol zosem chalashim kezakenim, but they're still weak, like they're older. In other words, everyone ages differently. I remember my grandfather used to tell me when he was well into his 90s, age is just a number. You could be in your 90s and move quicker and be sharper than 60-year-olds. It depends. It's just a number. People age differently. Some people, they're older and they have strength like a youth. So it depends. Some younger people are weaker and some older people are stronger, so to say. And it's also on the face. Some people have gray hair, lose their hair at a young age. Other people, they retain their hair their entire lives, even into triple digits. It all depends on the situation. So where did Yeshua line up in this way? Yeshua lo hayim me'elu lo me'elu. Yeshua wasn't on any extreme, he was average. Elachul shaso haisa kifi midas yamav. Yeshua looked his age. Like most older people. They look old because they are old. We also find that the pasuk informs us of age, that a person was older by Avram. Pasuk says, "Va'Avram zakin ba biyamim v'Hashem berech es Avram bakol." Avram was old. Ba biyamim, same expression. He came in days. By David HaMelech also. The Melech David zakin ba biyamim. David was old. Over here, the pasuk says, Yeshua zakin ba biyamim. He's old. In other words, he wasn't able to go from every single city and fight these wars and everything. Now, really, it would be fitting to first conquer the other territories of the land and then afterwards distribute it. However, right now, he said, I'm going to command you. No, no, no. You got to distribute it now. Even if you didn't conquer it. Even if you won't go, Hashem says, I will help with this matter and I will consider it as if it's already conquered. Some explain that what does it mean that Hashem was telling Yehoshua that you're old? Hashem assured Yehoshua, just like I was with Moshe, I will be with you. And Hashem said, Moshe lived 120 years, you will also live 120 years. But Yehoshua was lax. He was lazy when it came to conquering the land, and therefore 10 years of his life was removed, was shortened, because he was lax with this. Why was he lazy? Yehoshua saw, we already discussed this in the past, in perek Yud Aleph. Yehoshua saw that Moshe was commanded from Hashem, go! Moshe, go, take revenge from the fight with the against the Midyanim. And Moshe, even though he knew that he was going to die, because the pasuk says, "Nikom nikmas b'nei Yisrael me'is hamidyanim acher tesef elamech," and afterwards you will be gathered to your nation. You will perish. So the death of Moshe was dependent upon this war of Midian, and nevertheless Moshe was not lazy, and immediately he got up and he was involved with that battle. Yeshua didn't do this though. Hashem said, "Oh, you're gonna now try to prolong your life. I will shorten it." That's why David HaMelech says, "Rabbis machshavois b'levish v'atzas Hashem yitakum." People, they have a lot of thoughts, but at the end, Hashem's tactic it will prevail. What Hashem had in mind. Now we discussed to perhaps judge Yehoshua favorably. He didn't want to kill them because at the time of Moshe they weren't in Israel yet. In the time of Yehoshua, they were already in Israel. Number one, number two. No, that's number one. Number two is that in the time of Moshe, there was another leader which was fitting to take over his place, aka Yehoshua, as opposed to Yehoshua, there wasn't. So Yehoshua was concerned that people would start sinning if he wouldn't be alive, so he tried to prolong his life. Still, no, you have to listen to what Hashem says, and he was held accountable. So it says that Yehoshua was old. A deeper idea, you caused that old age to come upon yourself earlier, so to say. If you weren't lax with this war, you would have had another 10 years. It's a deeper idea over here. Another explanation of this pasuk, because it could be praising Yehoshua. It says by Avram Zakin Bal B'Yamim, Avram was old. Zohar says the entire duration of Avram's life, he yearned to attach himself to the Shekhinah, the divine presence of Hashem, and every single day he ascended. He grew more with Torah and mitzvahs and good deeds till he was older, and he reached a very high level, climax, culmination. Also, David, same idea. Yehoshua also. The idea is that it goes in levels, dargos, one step at a time to ascend. So Hashem was saying, be involved with this war, and then we'll distribute it. That will help you even go higher. When this land gets distributed, that is part of your task. Same idea by Avram. It was doubled. Avram Zakin, Babi Yamim. His days were doubled. This world, next world. That's the idea. Then he says this idea that Yeshua, we could leave the rest of the Moam Lois out. So anyways, this is the Moam Lois' explanation. Any questions, comments before we actually start the psukim over here?
How old was actually Yehoshua when Hashem was speaking now? Do we know?
I don't know if we know the exact age. If I'm not mistaken, it might have been around 103, but I think I saw somewhere maybe it was around he had 7 more years to do this, but he was already older, so he wasn't moving as quick, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll have to see if that comes up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. I thought it's a tremendous amount of chizuk and inspiration from what we could learn from this. Oh, it says right over here. I take that back. The Art Scroll in their commentary to the first pasuk says, "We know that Yehoshua lived to be 110 from perek Chav Daled pasuk Chav Tes." Now there's going to be seven. Now his 7 years of battle were over, and God commanded him to spend the last 7 years of his life dividing the country among the tribes and families. Exactly. So he was 103. He was 103. See, I forgot that. That's why I look
So
at
he,
it
so
quickly
technically
before.
there was technically it was supposed to be Kibbush 7 years and Chiluk 7 years, but I
Yes,
guess during these last seven, then I guess there was also Kibush as well. I'm guessing because it wasn't all taken over.
correct. It seems like it was quasi a little bit, but it was mainly the distribution. But yes, division of the land. But yes, um, they wanted to also uh divide the land even before they were physically on it and they physically got it, just so that there would be no issues in the future. That would be divided. Oh, it's divided, and this is what Yeshua said. Okay, now that he's no longer here, we already know Yeshua said it. Something like that.
Well, that's part, I guess, of what the beginning of the road was talking about, with the contracts and everything, make sure it's all
Correct.
done so nobody's going to get angry.
Correct. 100%. The Ralbag says that Yeshua Zakin, he was too old to complete all of the actual wars. See some of the psukim over here. Pasuk says, Yeshua Zakin Babi Yamim. Yeshua was old. The Omer Hashem Elav, Hashem told him, Atah Zakanta, you're already old. Pasuk Yamim, you came in a lot of days. Va'aretz Nishra Harbin Meod Lursht. There's a lot of land to inherit. Zos Haaretz Hanesharis. This is the following are the lands that remains. Kol Galilos HaPlishtim v'Kol HaGishuri. All of the districts of the Plishtim and the Gishuri territory. So these are what's called the unconquered territories. There were many pockets of lands where the Kanani people weren't driven out from, even after Yeshua's death. They're going to get listed also in Sefer Shoftim in the first perek. These lands were still occupied by the Canaanites. So they had to take care of it over here. The Mitsuda's comments. The Mitsuda's David. Zakin Babi Yamin. Zakin Yoimer Lasham Bnei Adam. Hamuchash. Hanira Ba'adam Eluban Hasehar. V'ha Kemetes Apanim. When you use the word someone's old, it's typically referred to as the hair being white, and there are on the face. What are those things called?
Whiskers? No.
Wrinkles.
Wrinkles. That's the word.
Whiskers.
Wrinkles on the face. Ulapam and makdim lavo below ace, like we saw in Lam Loace. Sometimes a person gets the wrinkles and the white hair much earlier than they are. I already have some white hairs. Only 35. Lazeh perish va'amar babi yamim. That's why the pasuk says babi yamim. Ke'oimar hine bab izmanu lefia yamim. The white hairs, the wrinkles, they came in their appropriate time. Is when they're supposed to come. I think aging could also have to do with the stress in a person's life. Like kids, I think they make you age quicker. Other factors, health, how a person eats, sleeps. Pasuk Gimel, Min Hashichor. This is the name of a place. The Radak says it could be like a Nile or something. Asher al Pnei Mitzrayim. That's by Egypt. Va'ad Gavul Ekron. And the border of Ekron. Safaina, the north, Leknani. Techashiv. That's already for the Knaanim, the Canaanites. Chamishos Sarni Plishtim. There are 5 governors of the Plishtim. Hazasi. These are all locations. Va'ash Dodi. Ha'eshkeloni. Sounds like Ashkelon. I think it's this might be Gaza also. I'm not sure. Which is Gaza. Hagiti. V'ha'ekroini. V'ha'avim. All of those places. Next pasuk says Miteman. That's the south. Kol Eretz HaKnani, the entire land of Canaan. Uma'ara Asher Latzidonim. And from Ada that belongs to the Sidonim, Ad Afeka, till Afeka, Ad Gvul Amori, until the border of the Amorim. The Mitsudas specifies something very important over here. What does it mean that it's considered for the Canaanim? V'halo Eretz HaKnani Nasati li Yisrael. The Canaanite lands I gave to the Jews. So in other words, all of the Jews are going to take these lands. And this is an important pasuk. Kol Yoshvi Ahar. Do we just do pasuk hey? No. Pasuk Hey. Va'aretz hagevili v'kol Levanon mizrach hashemesh, and the land of the Gevili and the entire Levanon, mizrach hashemesh, towards the rising of the sun, mibal Gad, from the plain of Gad, tachas har Hermon, under by like the foot, by the bottom of the mountain Har Hermon. If I'm not mistaken, this is the mountain in Israel that's colder and there's more snow there. This is where people ski in Israel. Ad Lavo Chamas, till the approach of Chamas. It's interesting. Israel is such a small land. It's like the size of New Jersey. The whole country, the whole world goes crazy about it. It's such a small land, but there's so much. I mean, Eilat isn't really officially part of Israel, but it's so tropical, so summery. Like, what's that place called down south? Like Puerto Rico or something. You know, it's so beautiful. And then you just head up north and then you're skiing. It's so interesting. Anyways, the next pasuk says, and this is actually a significant one. Kol Yoshve, sorry. Yeah. Kol Yoshve Ahar, all of the inhabitants, anyone who sits by the mountain. Min ha Levanon ad Misrafos, from Levanon until Misrafos Mayim, excuse me, it's a compound word, until that place. Kol Sidonim, all the Sidonim, here we have them again. Anoichi o Rishem. Hashem says, I will drive them out, Mipnei Bnei Yisrael, for the Jews. Rak, Hipaleha li Yisrael. The Jews should like make a lottery, Benachla, with the inheritance, Kasher Sivisicha, like I commanded you. So the Mitsudos David comments over here. Hatel, what does this mean exactly? A lottery. Place a hagorel. Place a lottery benehem, between them. Almasha kfar kavshu, what they already conquered, v'almasha lo kavshu, and which was unconquered, which they didn't conquer yet. Adayin. V'kol sheva yichvo sheschelko, and every tribe will conquer what his portion is. In other words, Hashem is promising the Jews that he will help assist with the battle after Yeshua's death. And it was important for the tribes to know how the occupied areas were to be divided. That's how our Barbanel explains this. This promise depended on Israel's readiness to fight for the lands. Many of the tribes declined to wage further wars of conquest. As a result, that's why the Canaanites remained in Israel and were a permanent challenge, which we will learn more about in the second perek of Shoftim. The next pasuk says in Zion, pasuk comes along and says Va'ata, and right now, Va'ata, and now, Chalek es ha'aretz hazois, distribute and divide this land, Benachala, as a inheritance, L'teishas hashvatim, for 9 of the tribes, V'chotzi shevet haManashe, and for half of the tribe of Manasseh. Why only 9.5? Why not 12? So the idea is, and we learned about this in the past a while ago, 2.5, I think, were outside of Israel. And there are many reasons why, and why half and all of that. We learned it in the past in the Sefer. Anyways, so these are the first 7 sukkim of this parak. The reason why it took so long is because there's a lot going on with that first pasuk. A lot of important messages which are incredibly relevant. Let's just end with the question. Always like ending with the question to get people thinking. In pasuk Yud Daled, pasuk says, "Rak l'shevet Alevi no noson nachlo." The tribe of Levi, which is the tribe that is designated to learn Torah and to teach it, and to dedicate themselves to spiritual pursuits all day, was not given any land. Why is that fair? Seems like that is completely unfair. So, next session that we do this, we will have to tackle that issue. There's around 4 or 5 answers that I'm aware of to this fundamental question, and it's pretty relevant for me because the Rambam says that nowadays it's not just the tribe of Levi who wants to dedicate himself completely to spiritual pursuits. It's anyone who comes along and says that they want to do this, they're considered the tribe of Levi. So you have to figure out why they don't have land. In fact, many rabbis today, they don't even own land. They don't own their house. The shul gives them a house and they live in there for free. And then when they leave, then they leave. They don't even own. So you see, even thousands of years later, they're still kept. So the question is why? So that's what we'll pick up next time. Any questions, comments on anything that we did today whatsoever?
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right.
Uh, well,
No, I think we're good.
no, I think
All
so.
right.
No.
I thought it was interesting stuff today, so.